Well, hi, everybody, and welcome back to Talkin Wellness, presented by South Florida Wellness Network. My name is Christian.
I'm Kayla.
And I'm Brendan.
And we are bringing you another great episode of My Story Matters with a very special guest. Would you please introduce yourself to our audience?
My name is Dan Casey, and I'm Brendan's dad.
Yeah!
AKA Brendan's dad.
AKA Brendan's dad. Yeah, so we told you we got some great episodes down the pipeline, and this is one of them. So we're going to be talking a My Story Matters episode, kind of talking about your story and your perspective and how wellness and mental health has been an aspect of your life, and maybe sometimes in your life that maybe it wasn't. And we're trying to get into... this is kind of like a little introductory episode to a series that we're going to be doing down the line, where we're going to be talking to first responders. So this is kind of like our little introduction to this. So we're really excited for this to be kind of the first in that line that we're going to do later on. But how are you doing today?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. And really, we want you to actually introduce yourself and kind of what your role has been and what kind of first responder were you in our community?
So I started off in '92 as a detention officer, but in about a 3-year span, I got the job as a police officer. So in that time frame, I have been in patrol. I've been in like street crimes, which is just a street level enforcement, undercover kind of thing. Domestic violence, auto theft, homicide, sex bat, and homicide was my. I did that for a little while, but that was very interesting. Very interesting, I would say.
Can
Yeah.
you share a little bit about what led you to become a police officer? Because that is all very, very interesting.
Yeah, so I did not have an inkling of doing that in my life, but my brother-in-law was a police officer here, and when we moved down here back in the '90s, I saw that and I was like, this is kind of what I want to do. I mean, I always wanted to help people, but like this is a different level of help. So that's what led me. He didn't like goad me into it, anything. I just did it on my own.
Maybe the opposite, actually. Told you not to do it.
So nah, that's you.
Okay.
That's funny. What were some of your early experiences on the force that really shaped your perspective on the job?
Okay, so early on, I think so. You have a year of probation while you're on, and you could basically get fired for anything in that year. So it was during my first year. I was working the beach, and we got a call for a child drowning in an actual tub in a high rise on the beach. So that right there, trying to even get there, was crazy. But ultimately, that child did pass away. But Brendan's brother was that age, like a 9-month-old at the time,
Wow.
and it kind of hit me really hard. Only I didn't know until the next day, which was pretty interesting. One of my sergeants looked at me and said, "How are you doing?" I said, "I'm okay." He goes, "How old's your son?" And I told him he was 9 months old, and he said, "You're going home for the day," which I didn't at the time was like, okay, cool. I went home and played with Brian and didn't think much of it. And later on, that's a huge deal
Yeah.
just to reflect. And later on, really later on, after I retired, I was like, that was really cool of that sergeant to take care of me in that way.
Would
Yeah.
you say that's because it's kind of rare for somebody to look out for you like that? Or
I definitely think that back in the '90s when I was first starting, that there was not guys look out for each other, guys and girls look out for each other, but you go to a call and you're expected to finish that call and go to the next call. There's really no time frame to recover, as it were, but you do it and you do it well and you just move on.
How
Yeah.
did that I mean, that just sounds really hard, right? And I feel like as a police officer, a first responder, you're really expected to do that because you have to continuously show up for your community and
Yeah.
answer these crisis calls. But how did that actually take a toll? If it did, how did that take a toll on you as a police officer working in all of the different diverse settings that you've worked in? And I'm sure you've had many calls, which we're going to talk about later on. But, was that hard for you to move on and continue showing up?
Whether it was or wasn't, I did it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that you push down and and move on. I think a lot of people do it in life anyways, but
Hmm.
that's your, it's your, I hate to say it, but it's your bread and butter. You don't show up for work, and you're not going to be working for much longer.
Yeah. I actually wanted to ask you because I had a similar conversation with somebody who works here actually at the office, and they were sharing their experience when they were a first responder. They worked in an ambulance, as those that kind of medical first response. And one of the things that they mentioned that really impacted me and kind of in preparation for this episode was the idea, and you mentioned it, turning it on and off. It's like you don't have time to feel, you have to do. It's kind of that dissociation, right? So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. Like, there's this idea that first responders are kind of like the heroes, right? But even in like all these movies, the heroes, they don't have time to feel. They have to react to the people in danger. So how is that idea of having to like switch off? How did that impact you, maybe in your personal life and even in your family potentially?
That's a good question. Um, uh, so as you do that, you you kind of get further and further away from the things that matter, because you think that this job is like, this is it. So that's one of the things that I tell the young guys now, is please, 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 please pay attention to your family and your friends. These people were here before you got this job, and they're going to be here after. So please do that. But to get back to your question, yeah, it did affect me. It affected me. I probably brought, and Brendan can tell you, I know he was younger, but probably brought a lot of that home, and I worked a lot. I worked a real lot, and I'm sure that had effects for me and them. That we feel like we make a lot of sacrifice, but really the family's the one making the sacrifice, because you're out there and they're supporting you, whatever it is. So yeah, I think it did affect me, and I there was some incidents where um, I wish that things were different,
Yeah.
but I really reflected on it when I retired,
Yeah.
and it really bothered me. And I've come to grips with the fact that it happened. I can't change it, but I can change me.
Yeah. Yeah. And going a little bit further into that, and thank you for being honest. I really appreciate it. Um, Obviously you've shared a little bit about the different areas that you've kind of had a hand in helping the community, and obviously one of the major ones that I resonate with because I just find it so interesting is homicide, and having to support the community in that regard. Obviously you don't have to get into details, we don't have to get into that, but I am curious to hear your perspective on the idea of bringing that home with you. I feel that I've had this similar conversation. That's why I love talking to police officers and military veterans, because there's always this conversation that inevitably happens about bringing it home with you and not being able to just leave it, right? Because it's a part of you, right? It's part of your career, and your career becomes a part of your life, and your life is always with you, whether you're in the job or home. So I wanted to ask you a little bit, was there ever a time, and this kind of lead to my next question as well, but has there ever been a time in your life where you started noticing that, wow, I am bringing all that home and I am letting it affect me in my personal time?
Yeah, there were a few times, and that's one of the things that I regret, is that I brought that home. But we and I'll talk about it. But we, as a family, for in Brendan's teens, I got divorced. So obviously, I wasn't very tolerant of a lot of things at that point, and um, that's what led up to that. Is that I brought a lot of that stuff home where I should not have. But it's almost impossible. However, I was fortunate enough that my wife was a nurse, and she had her own things going on at work that she could talk to me about and I could talk to her about. So I feel like we bounced a lot of that off each other. So I feel like it could have been a lot worse if I did not have anybody to talk to. And a lot of times at work, you sit car to car, you'll see police officers sitting driver's side to driver's side everywhere. And those are your sessions that guys are doing their getting some relief of some of those calls that we just talked about. Though, you really don't have a lot of people to talk to except for the guys and girls that you're working with
Yeah.
that know what you're going through. And or you don't want to put the burden on other people at home or wherever. And that's why I think that's where the disconnect comes, is that you think that this job is like, nobody can understand it, but people can understand it. I mean, people are normal people that understand what's going on in your life, and the same thing is when they talk to you, you understand it. So those are the things that I tell people is, just, try to balance your life. It is very difficult to do the job and come home and turn it on and off, but it is possible. Guys and girls do it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
Hmm.
I have a follow-up question to that, just to kind of ask you about like what the support looked like being a police officer. Like, was there
Yeah.
actual support and debriefing? Because I mean, to show up to that many calls and you worked homicide and domestic violence and all the things that you've seen, I mean, that's very traumatic. And so, regardless of being able to continue showing up, like that stuff sticks with you, right? Like those traumas, you get vicarious trauma because you're constantly in a state of having hypervigilance, right? And so it's like I could assume that that would be extremely hard to turn off. What did the support look like for officers? And was there support or was there a lack of support?
Yeah. So, like I said, back in the '90s, all I ever really heard about was EAP. And EAP was supposed to be like an anonymous thing where you called and they sent you to see somebody. That's all I ever heard. I didn't hear of the things like they have now with the SISM teams and all these peer groups and people to talk to when there's a huge event. We didn't really have any debrief other than the sergeant talking to you about what are you doing, what are you doing in this case or whatever. But that's the debrief. You go in and see something horrific, and you just got to be okay with it. So, but now I think there's a big push, or there has been a big push on the debrief, from what I'm told. And I still talk to people that are working, and they like to debrief on pretty much everything. So, whether it matters to the person or not, they're gonna debrief and talk about to make sure that they've covered people, and maybe see somebody that was affected by it. And I think it's a good idea because maybe somebody comes up to you afterwards. They don't want to talk about it in front of a group, but they come up
Right.
to you afterward and said, "I was really affected by what just happened, or what happened a week ago, or whatever." And they get the help that they need because of it, or they start to get the help that they need because of it.
Yeah. Was there a lot of stigma like when you were a police officer around like asking for help or saying like, hey, this actually bothered me or
Yeah, I know we had people that maybe didn't say those exact words, but and I'm gonna say this anyways, but ended up on like the rubber gun squad where they took your stuff away and they went to see somebody, and then guys and girls would talk and be like, "Oh, that guy's on the rubber gun squad and he's assigned to a desk." So yeah, it was. We would not treat it the way we should, but it was probably another way of us to just get relief that we needed. We're like, okay, well, that's not us. So yeah, I still think there was, and I think there will always be, and hopefully there'll be something to change that. But I think the stigma is huge and it's real.
Yeah.
I have a question about that, and like whether or not you think that that kind of is built into the sort of desensitization to certain things that you need to have in order to do the job.
Yeah, I interview potential police officers every day, and those are the things that come to mind. And then I try to throw a little bit into the pre-interview to try to see what kind of character we're looking at. You don't have a crystal ball. You don't know how people are going to react. They can tell you they're going to react this way or that way, but until you actually get into that scene or that call, you don't know. But you're exactly right. I try to bring a trait out. Um, if it matters or not, because you don't know, you just don't know who you're getting across the table. But it does, you do need that.
yeah, I agree. I could definitely see that. So if you were to say, like thinking about all of the training that you had leading up to becoming a police officer, if you could go back in time and say this should have been added into that, what would that look like?
No, so like we discussed a little bit, the peer groups and all that. I think that should be from the start when you go to an academy. And I know they have some crisis training, and I've seen that, and I've been a part of that. But I think in the academy, that should be number one, as far as that should probably be its own course, as far as how you deal with that, and what resources you're going to have as a police officer. to do your job. And, so you can call one person. And I think, like I said, I think those things are changing, and it's not like I went to the academy, but I think those things are changing, and they are moving towards, or in the right direction, I should say. But I think that should be your training, and I think that should be your training constant throughout your career.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you, and maybe this leans more into the lighthearted, and if it does, I apologize. But I'm just very curious to hear from you. So, obviously, when we do this podcast, we've interviewed veterans before, and when we have this conversation with them, there's always this conversation of all the mental health toll, and when they come back home, there's all this substance use problems and problems with family. In your opinion, we hear all these negative things all the time, but why is the job worth it still?
So for if it's in you, it's in you. That's what I tell people. But because you either can do this job or you can't. I mean, it's a lot, like you said, it's a lot to put up with, and the way the media portrays police sometimes,
Yeah.
and sometimes we're our own worst enemy. So um, the the drive to help people and to I don't say change like a community or anything, but the drive to help people is why people do this job. And the benefits, obviously, for a lot of people outweigh the negatives.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you can get, I'm just going to be honest, but if you could get a pension at the end of your job and nothing happens to you, then great that you're helping your family, you're helping yourself,
You made
and
it. Yeah.
um, hopefully you made it through without any issues. You didn't get arrested, you didn't, get hurt, but that I think is it's probably the number one. This is a good job with great benefits, but for me, I do miss the camaraderie between the officers and going out and being that person to solve problems. Um, I enjoyed that part of the job. I didn't enjoy some things, but the part where somebody calls you and they're having a problem, you go to their house and you can fix it, and you're not fixing their problem for life, but you're fixing it for the night,
Yeah.
and then you go on to the next thing. That's actually one of the things that I did not like later in life, is that when you do that for a living, people start calling you on a regular to solve their problems.
Interesting.
And after a while, you're like, okay, maybe you can figure that out. Like
Right.
I'm not the guy I do that at work, and okay, you called me, and it's great that you called me, but can you please figure out your own issue?
Yeah. Sure.
Really bothered me later on in life. I mean, I've changed a little bit now, but it really bothered me that you're like, okay, I'm going to solve your problem again.
Yeah.
But
Is that
yeah.
does that kind of tailor into the idea of like taking it home too? Is that you're like, I just solved all these problems. The last thing I want to do is have this many more problems to deal with.
Yeah,
or-
100%. Like you come home and you think the dishes in the sink is the least of your issues, but
Yeah.
the house still has to run, and everybody still has to contribute, and you're like, okay, the dishes need to be done. Who cares,
Yeah.
But and that's the balance that I talked about, is that you got to be able to balance your career and your home life, and if you're taking it home, that's less you're doing for your family, and I'm sure maybe you could share. Do you have a specific about anything
Are
like
you
that? Yeah,
are
I'm
you
interviewing you.
us now? Is that how that's
Yeah,
going?
No, but do you-
It's a
absolutely.
give and take. It's
No,
a give
but-
and
of course,
take.
of course.
No, but I'm
No, you're
curious
right.
because you asked the question. So I
Yeah,
was just,
yeah.
do you have anything specific that I did early on that either not that I guess that you had a problem with, or
Yeah.
that you think,
Hopefully, something that won't get him in trouble on his
Yeah.
show.
No,
you know?
no, nothing
I
in
mean,
trouble.
I'll pack your stuff up today if I need to.
All right, all right. Well, I have something to look forward to when I
Yeah.
get home. No, I think that for me, there's not like a singular incident that I can look back on truthfully. And I think since we're looking at the strengths and the positives too, when you're talking about community, when you're talking about those moments, I truthfully like to harp on the moments where we showed up when we knew you were having a bad day, when you were in one of your details and brought you food. Let's say we brought you cookies. We went and said hi when we were little. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah, I
And-
do remember that.
yeah. So like, and also I think of the moments where, where even when mom would come home, because she was
She
working
had
in
the same. Yeah.
she was working in maternity, or when she was, working on any of the emergency floors or anything that she was on, she would have a hard day, and it was sort of told to us like, hey, like they had a hard day. It would either be you or, you know, her coming to us and saying that and saying like, just don't try and add to it right now. So we always were
That's
told,
awesome.
yeah. So when I think of those moments, I harp on more. When I think of the little things, it's like maybe just like you were maybe a little quicker to anger some nights because of something that had happened, or
Mhm.
um, something might have set you off, or we had to just be a little more quiet because we knew you had a hard day and stuff like that. Yeah, it's not like a singular incident. Like I'm very lucky. Like I said that before in my episode. When it comes to, we were never punished too ruthlessly or anything
Yeah,
like
no, yeah,
that. We
that's
were,
fair.
and like I think it's also a testament, to what you mentioned earlier when it came to the, um, to you and mom divorcing years ago, and it was the fact that you two were both such great people that we didn't really have much to worry about in that
Yeah.
aspect. And um, I don't know if you want to share, but I've already told him before that you guys are still dating in a way.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You said we're dating. I mean, we live in the same house.
I mean, that's
So.
kind of I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what you guys want to call it.
Brendan's like,
You're not legally married anymore, so I don't know.
True, but
Yeah, but you know,
yeah,
that's,
not
but I
that.
think that's super awesome because, and I told Brendan this with
That's hilarious.
with your relationship because it's like, you can look back and reflect like you've been obviously out of, law enforcement. It sounds like you're still kind of involved in some which way or another, even in retirement, because I don't think when it's a calling, right, it continues to call
exactly,
you.
Correct.
exactly.
But it sounds like, you were able to do some work on yourself and have some reflection after the fact that was able to bring you some healing. And to me, like hearing from what you said with like, those would be the things that I would have maybe changed if I could go back. Right. But we can only go forward. And so sometimes the lessons that we learn is the greatest, knowledge to give to somebody else coming into the field.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate, that standpoint that you bring. And my other question is really about like, in that role, like what were some of like the biggest stressors that you had
Yeah.
as a police officer?
I, I mean, just going out there is stress enough, but
Right.
being able to. So Brendan and his brother went to Catholic school and private school growing up. So I just moved away from the mic.
It's okay.
But I
cut it.
feel like the stress to provide um,
Oh,
for
right.
him and his mom, or for us to make this happen, it's things that we didn't have, and obviously you want your kids to have things that you didn't, right? So
Mhm.
the stress of performing and providing for your family on a daily basis, and like if something happens to you, like you're freaking out because I always had to work, I always got to work, and it throws off, like you said, it throws everything off, and it kind of, yeah, you're quicker to respond, and maybe you snapped at somebody when you shouldn't have, but because you had 3 hours sleep or you didn't sleep,
Mhm.
and when you
Yeah.
go to
Yeah.
if you're in a homicide, you're pretty much there till it's either solved or you can't do anything else, and um, so those are just being on the job is the stress enough. In my opinion, and I'm only speaking for myself, but I think that if you brought 10 people in here, you'd probably get the same answer.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How
Yeah.
did you learn to live with the stress? Like if you could pinpoint to like certain things that maybe you did or held on to that like really helped you to show up, especially when it got hard?
So we tried to. I know we used to go, at least to have a life outside of that. We used to try to go on trips and at least like acknowledge that, hey, everybody's working a lot. There's a lot of stress. Let's go to, let's go wherever. Whatever place you want to put on it, but let's go here for the weekend, or let's even go here for the night, or just to get that you getting out of the area, and at least everybody can take a break from the daily grind.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that's
No,
it.
no,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
I think. Sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah. He is my dad. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Christian, I'm gonna ask you to stop.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Totally
stop.
kidding.
I'm just gonna sit here,
No,
look
no,
like
no,
a pretty
no.
kid.
And you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Aw.
So I think in the spirit of like self-care, like, there was those moments where we would go out of town, but what were the things that kept you afloat on the day to day that really made it, at least bearable for you?
So you always look forward to coming home, and that's your goal at the end of the night as a first responder, is to go home at the end of the night. But you always want, there's times that you wouldn't know, or your brother wouldn't know. But if I came home at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd peek in just to, you give yourself that, all right, cool. You
Mm.
look in, you're like, all right, everybody's good. And the check-ins, and even if I wasn't home, I would always call and say, hey, what's going on? Or you
Yeah.
guys would call me or show up to somewhere that I was, and that lot of times, like you said, that keeps you going. Like if I'm working on a holiday and you guys bring me dinner, like that's solid. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
huge.
absolutely.
You're like, okay, nothing's open. I can't go anywhere. And my family just showed up so I could
Brought
eat
me.
Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas
That's
dinner or
awesome.
whatever. Even if we're not at a table, that's our table because you just came to my office. You know what I mean?
That's
Yeah.
My
awesome.
office was my car. So
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
those are the little, like you said, the little things that, and they're not little, they're huge
They're
because
huge.
Yeah,
you
they're
still,
huge.
I could still remember you guys coming to Oakwood and I'm sitting there and that's probably what you're talking
Yeah.
about. And we're eating dinner as a family, but not a family. You know what I mean? I mean, not at a table, but as a family. So it's important. And the support from everybody that, you know, you get a call and you're like, yeah, I know you're working, but how are you? You know what I mean? So it's big to check in on people, and a lot of times that's what keeps you going. Just to know you're going home, or you know you're gonna see somebody at the end of your shift, and it makes you feel a lot better.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could totally see that. It's so interesting because like support is like a huge aspect of recovery too. And so you saying that and then holding on to those little motivators, I resonate with that deeply because there are times when I'm like, and I can't really resonate with like being a police officer showing up to homicides and things like that, but more resonating on the fact that I may work a really long week, right? And putting hours into something that is meaningful to me because to me it's showing up for the community in a different way as a first responder. And it is like those little things with like my children or my fiance that fuel me as well. And so like even if I got home a little late and my son was sleeping, I would go and peek in just to see him sleeping, you know, and that was just like for me the fuel to get up the next day and show up. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Or other times where they were playing sports, and I had 5 minutes I could sneak away to watch an inning of a baseball game, and
Yeah, we'd see him on the fence or something. Just
I'd just show
yeah.
up. Those were good moments. You're like, all right, well, I might have missed the whole game, but I was there. He saw me, I saw him, and all right, I gotta go.
Yeah, you were intentional.
That's
I mean, you
awesome.
got to be
Yeah.
intentional. And I think that that's really, you know, what I'm hearing from you because the job that you worked was like, you know, all hours of the night, or if you were on probably a case or solving a homicide or things like that, it was probably a little bit more sporadic. So being intentional as a dad was really important for you during that time.
Yeah. So I have been cooking this question for a while now.
Oh
you
boy.
Brandon and I were big movie people. I've been obsessed with police movies and shows my entire life. Talk about, you know, Bad Boys, Seven, End of Watch, and then shows like Law and Order, stuff. I've been obsessed with it ever since I was a young kid. But a big question that I love to ask our guests, especially, you know, when there's movies that are made based on similar stories, is when you see a movie portraying police work, detective work in any capacity, what are some of the things that you notice where you're like, man, that's just like not real at all? Or
I love that you just said that. I'm not gonna say the specific shows because there's a bunch of them, but when they do all this crazy stuff with like they're pushing stuff over and they go, oh, let's bring this up, and all of a sudden it's on this screen. You're like pushing it over there. I'm
Enhance.
like, where is that? Where's
Enhance.
yeah, where's that tool been my whole life? Oh, we can just pull that up and find out the exact thing that's going on right now, and we push it all the way. I just think some of that stuff is ridiculous, or the stuff that they're shooting like 100 rounds, but it's like a 12 round magazine.
That one always gets me.
Yeah, so I try not to pay attention to that part anymore, but the other stuff, the technology they say we have, and I'm like, are you crazy right now? Like maybe I'm just was in the wrong department, I guess. I don't know, but
Maybe.
And I know that you don't even really enjoy watching
yeah,
stuff like that.
the live stuff kind of I can't watch the live stuff. When they go on these calls and people are, it just brings me right back to not a good place. So
I get that. Yeah.
and then like now I work as a civilian in a police department now, and when I hear the radio, like it's like, oh, okay, I don't like that because it's like chirps in your
Yeah,
ear.
yeah.
And if
Interesting.
that was driving you to work all night, but I didn't want to work, but it just like, oh my God, I can't hear that anymore. And
Yeah.
sometimes I would come home and just like sit I still do it. Sometimes I like to just come home and sit in silence, not in a room where it's dark, but just sit in no TV on, no nothing, and just be like, all right, cool. I don't want to hear anything right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
and I would come home and be like,
Oh.
all right, nothing's on, nothing's no conversation, but that's what you needed. So,
Yeah.
that's a way, advocating for yourself in a way too.
Well,
So
you were like a Loudy Loudington.
I still
Loudy
am.
Loudington.
That's,
Yeah.
I'm still
Yeah.
a Loudy Loudington.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Very loud.
Loudy Loudington. Is that gonna be your new name in the show? Loudy
Yeah,
Loudington.
that's my new nickname for the show. You just coined that.
LL.
So,
Wow.
yeah,
We're gonna put that on T-shirts. It's gonna be great.
I know, like, to go back to the movie thing, I know that you tend to really enjoy like comedy as a way to like release and a way to, engage with entertainment. That way you can kind of take a step back.
Yeah, so so it's a very serious, obviously it's a very serious job, but and if people that didn't know me would think like immediately like, oh, he's got a very serious face, but I find the humor in pretty much everything. So I feel like you gotta laugh. I mean,
You
if
have
you
to.
didn't laugh, I mean, come on, that'd be if you say, hey, one cruel thing that you could do to me is I couldn't laugh or be funny, I would be like, all right, what's
Horrible.
the point?
It's horrible. And it's interesting because I see it translated not only in you but in your son as well. Like I see it.
You're welcome.
Brendan, exactly. Brendan and I hang out all the time here at the office and even outside. And one of the things that I've noticed is that humor is a big way that you guys just generally like live life. And in my family it's the same thing. My family, if we're not we have a saying in my family, if we're not laughing, we're crying.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that saying because life can be very overwhelming sometimes. You're dealing stuff with as a family, as individuals, and just to be able to laugh and be able to joke about something, even if it's like something serious, but to be able to joke about it. My wife and I are doing that as well. We're probably going to do it if we ever have kids. Is like that's part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we have fun. Like when we're around the TV, or even if the TV's not on, we might beat something to death as far as like a funny line or something, and then later it'll come up, and we're like, "Remember we said that?" And then we were just talking the other day about you remember the Ron Burgundy thing?
Oh God,
So
yeah.
when we went to see that movie,
the
there's-
second
the second
Ron
Anchorman?
Burgundy, Anchorman, yeah.
Anchorman, and we were I just thought about it the other day, and I'm like, oh my God, remember on the car ride home where we were just like laughing,
And then we're
Like,
just rehashing it.
we were just
and-
rehashing it 20 years later. We're still talking about it. But yeah, so that's- yeah, laughter is
Yeah.
it's the best. My mom, when she had Alzheimer's later in life,
Mm.
she said this was like right out of the blue. She goes, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had a lot of fun. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, Mom.
Absolutely.
I mean, you thought about that, didn't you?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's stuff
yeah, we
through.
do have a lot of fun.
So obviously, as we're kind of closing out this episode, I don't want to end this episode without having the discussion on today and resources in the community and stuff like that. You mentioned something before the episode to me in our pre-interview that I would love to hear you kind of talk about in this aspect of the show where we talked about resources.
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned it a little bit, but I just wish there was more resources for first responders, and that could be anything. And like I said, they are moving in the right direction. I just think that a lot of times police departments are reactive in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
We are, that's a profession that you're reactive in anyways,
Mm-hmm.
and you try to be proactive. But I wish there was just a little bit more emphasis on that. And there's been, lately there's been some stuff just locally within the past couple years that has really kind of shed light on what kind of resources there are for police officers. But I know, and I still talk to people, like I mentioned, that they are getting better as far as the peer groups, the CISM groups, and all that. But I just want it to be a constant. I don't want it to be a reactive thing. I want like I was talking about up north. I think there, and when I say north, up in New England, that they've kind of like totally gone towards support for police officers and first responders, where there's an actual place you can go for a week. And a week's not long enough, obviously, but at least it gets you moving in the right direction, and it's
Mhm.
something. I wish that they could bring that here, and I've actually talked to one of the ladies that's involved in that about it. If they could kind of expand, and right now it's just up there, but and maybe I'm just ignorant where there is a place here and I don't know about, but as far as I know there is not that where you're just going to the doctor or whoever to kind of get you right. And to be honest, and I didn't say this before, but you need I said this on a different show, but if you go to you get your car checked out every 3,000, 5,000 miles, but do you really go get yourself checked out?
Mm-hmm.
No,
No.
not a lot of people do that. And this, I think, is one of those, for me, one of those professions where maybe every year, every whatever, you should go and unload.
Yeah.
I had something happen to a friend of mine in the as a police officer, and I didn't know how to deal with it, so I had to go and get a checkup,
Mm-hmm.
and that person really helped me out. And I don't know if I could have got through that without that help, because I just hadn't dealt with something like that before. I'm not going to get into specifics, but it was basically like I he didn't pass away, but it was basically like I lost a friend died, but he didn't. He didn't get
Yeah,
injured.
yeah,
He didn't
yeah,
die, but some bad things happened, and I didn't know how to deal with it.
yeah.
So you always need that. For me, I would say to anybody, like, break the stigma
Yes.
and go get yourself checked out, because it's invaluable. I mean, you're helping yourself, but you're helping everybody else that's supporting you.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. And I think what you're doing here today is adding to breaking the stigma, especially sharing that, like, if you could go back, like, these would be some of the changes that I would have made. And that would have been to kind of deal with things a little bit differently. So what would you say to a first responder right now, who may be still like suffering in silence and is struggling? Because I do believe that the stigma runs deeper than the individual. I think it's part of like the system, because of having the need to react and show up and be hyper vigilant is like you have to be well. And I feel like there's still this fear of like letting people know, like, I may not be doing well in this moment, but I still need to show up.
I just feel like the like I mentioned, family check-ins,
Mm-hmm.
at work. There should be some type of system where not only are your squad mates, because those are the people that are really seeing you every day and at every call and every minute. And sometimes, like I said before, you're with these people a lot of your life, so they know if you're off, and to say something to you or to somebody else to get the ball rolling. So um, I would say there should be some type of not checklist, but there should be something from the rank, from down, I guess from the administration down, that you're checking in, and you checked in on, officer whoever last week. There was a bad call. You checked on that person. That person seems okay, or they don't seem okay, and this is what we're going to do about it. And maybe them talking to you kicks it off, where they say, "Hey, you know what? I do need to go talk to somebody about this. I don't know how to handle this." And maybe they've never had that experience before. And as a police officer, there's things that you're never going to ever experience anywhere else, and you can't turn it off and you can't unsee it. So um, I think just to talk to people and have that support is just, it's invaluable, like I said before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to be the first one to say thank you.
Oh, thank you
This
for
has
having me.
been one of our. I don't know. I'm always a big sucker when we have great interviews, and I love it when we get to hear authentic experiences from people who actually went through those experiences. So thank you so much for being not just open, but being willing to trust us to have this conversation. Thank you so much. To all our awesome listeners and viewers, we thank you so much for watching and listening. Make sure to give us a like, comment, or share this podcast with whoever you can, so we can reach more people and just talk about what it means to be well and what it means to find resources in the community to find your wellness. So by all means, do that, please. We thank you so much. We'll see you next time.